Hi, welcome to Crypto Ramble. My name is Desiree. This is an interview with Doug from Monero Talk. Monero Talk implies that he's a big fan of Monero. That's what the channel is all about. I myself am a big fan of Particle. And as you may know, Particle and Monero are two privacy coins. So that is the topic that we have in common. We'll just be getting into it about privacy coins. We've been waiting for a long time to have this conversation, and I hope it's interesting to you. There has been a lot of interest in privacy in the crypto space and the Bitcoin community because people are realizing that maybe this is an issue that needs to be looked at again. And while everybody will care about the specific projects that they are aware of and in line with, we can just talk about it in general as well, and maybe do a bit of the competitive chat also. Before jumping into the interview, please take a moment to listen to this from a sponsor. Bityard is a new Singapore-based cryptocurrency exchange whose main focus is in enabling simple trading for its users, even with complex contracts. The registration process takes less than 90 seconds, and all you need is an email or phone number to get started. Each account gets access to the daily mining feature, where just for logging in every day and clicking the mine button, you earn free cryptocurrency. As part of ongoing promotions, you can earn cryptocurrency quickly and easily by claiming 1 USDT just for creating an account, and then 2 USDT for verifying your email and participating in the demo trading feature. Everyone has the ability to participate and be an affiliate with Bityard at www.bityard.com/KOL, where you can get your own affiliate link at bityard.com/KOL. You then would have the ability to demonstrate with 100,000 USDT. I'll put some links in the description so that you can go and check that out if you would like. Enjoy the interview.
Doug Tuman, or known as Chowbunga Man on Twitter and Reddit. Long story there. I won't get into the Chowbunga Man story. But yeah, I run the Monero Talk YouTube show where we talk about all things Monero. Obviously, we talk about privacy issues at large as well. But yeah, Monero Talk is all about the exploration of finding out which cryptocurrency is truly performing as digital cash is the way I like to look at it. So I'm a digital cash maximalist, and I currently believe Monero is the best coin for that purpose, for carrying out the ideals of the cypherpunk ideals and actually following through and acting as true digital cash.
All right. So I met Doug at the Magical Crypto conference last year, but I just realized I don't actually know your history of how you got into crypto, and I'm curious about that.
I'm just kind of a nerd at heart. So my day job, completely unrelated to crypto. I'm actually a civil engineer and an attorney. I'm in charge of the infrastructure for a very large municipality in New York, so completely unrelated to crypto. But I was always interested in disruptive technologies, and on the side, I had at one point experimented with the concept I called Gov Together, which was basically experimenting with improving representative democracy using technology so that constituents would be able to more directly participate in how legislation was passed. So trying to make representative democracy more direct, so to speak, but using technology. And that was in like 2009, maybe. So while I was doing that, I ended up at meetups in New York City where people eventually brought up the term Bitcoin, and that was probably the first time I heard about it. Fortunately, did not get involved at that stage because I was too into my own side projects. But that kind of opened my eyes. And actually, even before that, I had thought about like the concepts of digital cash. I was like very interested in that. I had often thought about how great would it be if you can, go to your local 7-Eleven and buy a card with cash and then use that to somehow transact online, so like cash for the internet, not knowing what all the actual hurdles were and how you would actually achieve that. And when I first heard of Bitcoin, I didn't realize Bitcoin had actually solved that problem. Didn't put two and two together. So it wasn't until around 2000, late 2013, that I actually said, hey, let me take a deeper look at this stuff. I keep hearing about Bitcoin. I just assumed it had attempted to be digital cash, but that it was centralized and was inevitably going to fail like everything else. I had heard about the earlier attempts, the more centralized versions, and saw them come and go, and I assumed Bitcoin was just that. And what I actually ended up buying first, which you probably wouldn't believe, is Dogecoin. So like it was December 2013. I was like, oh, I missed the Bitcoin boat, so didn't really like read the white paper at all or anything at that point. Just knew Bitcoin. So I'm like, let me buy some Dogecoin. Maybe it'll pump 20x or something. And I bought that on Christmas Eve. And I remember I woke up Christmas morning to check my Dogecoin. I had it stored on an online wallet, a web wallet, which anybody in crypto today should know that's like the number one thing you shouldn't do. So I bought this Dogecoin on Reddit. I used like PayPal to buy it off of somebody. It was like $50 worth. And I woke up the next morning. I went to check my web wallet, and all my Dogecoin was gone. It wasn't there. And I was like, huh. This is what crypto, like this doesn't make much sense. Like this can't be what the technology. I'm like, I obviously must be missing something or not using it right. I mean, how could Bitcoin have this value? Because I think at that point Bitcoin was valued at like maybe that was like the first like real mega pump. It was like maybe like $1,000 at that time. I was like, there must be much more to the technology. So that's what actually prompted me to then start to research Bitcoin, and I went down the rabbit hole. Eventually, listened to the Andreas Antonopoulos videos, read the white paper, and that's when I was like, oh, okay, it's decentralized. Like I didn't even really fathom the concept of what decentralized truly meant until I got into Bitcoin, like what that really truly means. And so that was a big eye opener for me. And then I quickly, became a Bitcoin fanatic and I guess a Bitcoin maximalist, so to speak, at one point. And I delved deeply down that rabbit hole and ultimately arrived at Monero once I realized that Bitcoin was lacking one fundamental element of digital cash, which is, the fungibility. And to this day, I don't think Bitcoin is fungible. I think it's kind of a critical flaw that it has because of the transparent blockchain, and that's what brought me to Monero. So kind of a long story, but that is the full story.
That was really interesting to hear. I want you to say the term that you used the first time we tried this interview, because we tried it before and my internet was really bad. You said that you didn't consider any coin that didn't have privacy, or I guess isn't fungible. You use a term for it. You call them surveillance coins. And I just thought it was really funny that you call every other coin that. Could you just talk about that a bit? And you already mentioned it, but talk about like realizing when you realized that Bitcoin wasn't digital cash, in the sense that it doesn't have this feature that most people don't really think in depth about. But when you hear the term currency, you think about currency that already exists for most of us, and that is fungible. And so when people hear the term digital currency, they automatically attach that feature to it. But then you realize if you ever take the time to look into it more, that actually it doesn't even have this thing that you would think is fundamental to a currency. And I'm not going to say that it's not a currency, like it is tracking the exchange of value, blah blah blah, but it's not like what most people think of. So can you talk about like that realization some more?
Yeah, so I mean, what I don't understand is kind of the notion of privacy coins, so like privacy cryptocurrencies. In my mind, a true cryptocurrency is obviously going to be private. So I see the first killer app of crypto being digital cash, and cash is fungible. Cash is innately private. We don't call it, there isn't cash and then privacy cash. There's just cash, and one of its elements is that it's fungible and private. So I see, true cryptos being something like Monero, and everything else that doesn't have those attributes potentially being a surveillance coin. So I think that's kind of a better way of looking at it. So Bitcoin is built on a transparent ledger. It's a surveillance coin in that it can easily be surveilled, and Monero doesn't have that attribute. It's true digital cash. So that's my take on that. I understand that people use privacy coins because it's just kind of like an easy way of explaining it, but I think it's unfortunate that that's where we're at, that we categorize these things as privacy coins,
right.
Because they're really just true cryptos. That's what cryptocurrency is supposed to be. Like I said, it's like calling it privacy cash, and it kind of gives it a negative connotation, right? Obviously, I'm a true believer in privacy, and I see that it's as like a fundamental right. But unfortunately, when you say things like that, it sometimes has a negative connotation. Like, oh, well, why do you need to do private things? Obviously, I don't believe in that viewpoint, but I don't even think we should have to fight that battle, because I think it should just be called cryptocurrency, and Monero is a true crypto, and it's digital cash.
I definitely agree with the sentiment that it shouldn't be like something fringe. It shouldn't be that you have to put the qualifier before it. But however, it's like language in that even though you can argue all of those semantics, if the general population, I guess in this scenario, if the general crypto population decides to call these set of coins that, just because of the nature of them being altcoins, like Bitcoin being the first, and then them having privacy coins having a certain feature, and that's the distinctive feature, then even though I agree with what you're saying, that they're really just cryptocurrencies, if everybody else calls them privacy coins, then it's like you can't fight the wave. You can't fight the wave of people, even if you go down to the details, it doesn't make sense to call it that. So that's kind of just a comment. I don't know if you want to respond to that. I have something else I want to ask you if you don't want to respond to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I think you can fight the wave. I mean, it's we're not talking about thousands of years of the use of these terms. I mean, cryptocurrency's only been around for 10 years. I still think we're in kind of like the early phase. Bitcoin maximalists will have you believe that Bitcoin is already the gold standard, which I think is a little ridiculous considering the technology was only unleashed, whatever it is, 10, 11 years ago. And we're still in that experimental stage. So I still think there is time to kind of set what the words of the industry and what things should be called. And that's why, I think calling Bitcoin a surveillance coin is a good thing to say, and to get the word out there, and to try to kind of change the perception and have people looking at it that way. Because that is the correct way to look at it in my mind, and I think you'll start to see that meme spread. And at the end of the day, that's what all these things really are, right? So Bitcoin is really currently the most popular meme that's out there in terms of a protocol that people are using for transacting value. But it's a surveillance coin at the end of the day. So I mean, like I feel like, right? Do you hesitate using the term? I do.
I do hesitate.
Just like there's a negative connotation to privacy coin, there's obviously a negative connotation to surveillance coin. I think much more negative, right? So
yeah.
Privacy coin, I ultimately think is a very positive thing. But there is a certain sector of people who will have you believe, well, there's a lot of dangers that go along with that. Surveillance coin is clearly a negative. There's clearly a negative kind, but you could see the positive there too, right? Surveillance coin is great. I mean, if you want to see everything that everybody's doing, and there are certain attributes to that, right? So if you live in a world where, not saying I want to live in this world, but you can You could say, if we lived in this world where everybody was using Bitcoin and it was perfectly transparent, maybe there would be less crime, right? Because it'd be very hard to get away with things. Certainly, it may be more difficult for governments to get away with things. But you got to think of what you're also sacrificing there. You're ultimately sacrificing human individuality at its core, right? Because if everybody's being surveilled 24/7, it begins to erode away at what true human individuality is all about. So certainly more of a true crypto believer, and I see Bitcoin as surveillance coin, and I don't think it's too late to change the terminology and to get the true messaging out there as to what these things should be called.
Yeah, well, I stand corrected in terms of the length of time. Like you're right, it hasn't been that long since Bitcoin came out, so it's definitely not too late to change how people speak about these topics. And I do think that cryptocurrencies that aren't fungible, like their transparency can be very useful. So I don't think that like the regular people who are just using it for day to day for buying and selling or trading or exchanging money with each other, that they shouldn't have privacy. But sometimes you mentioned governments, sometimes for businesses it might be useful to be able to track everything from afar. So that can be good. I would say that I don't like the term surveillance coin, not because I think you're right, like they are surveillance coins, and if you think about why people call privacy coins, like if you're going to put the word privacy before it, then you could put the word surveillance before other coins too. But surveillance, I think, has more of a negative connotation than privacy, and surveillance is like, you could also say like you could call them transparency coins. But that's not the real reason why I wouldn't say it, just because I don't want to offend anyone. And I know that's like not a great reason, but that is really the only reason that I'd like not bother to say that, because they do allow people to be tracked. And I'm not a fan of that, and I also, care about privacy. So that is the truth. For me at least. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my response to that would be, if it offends people, I mean, that's unfortunate, but that's, I think, what we need to do. If you truly understand this technology and you understand why it's important for a cryptocurrency to be fungible and private, then you should be out there criticizing these other projects that aren't doing that, especially if they're getting momentum and getting network effect, because the end result with that is quite scary. I mean, if a surveillance coin ends up becoming the backbone of the future global financial system, I see that being as a very scary scenario. It's kind of like we're at this crossroads, right? So the original pitch with Bitcoin, at least my understanding of it was this from this cypherpunk perspective, which is creating a liberating technology that will preserve liberty in the digital age, right? And that for me, that was like the real sales. Like that's my understanding of it. The true value proposition of what this stuff's supposed to be is that it preserves individuality and liberty in the digital age, and it's something that will allow us to transact freely, essentially preserving free speech. And if something like Bitcoin takes hold, which is a surveillance coin, it's not going to usher in that error of preserve liberty in the digital age. In fact, it's going to be quite the opposite, and it's potentially much worse of a scenario than what we currently have. I mean, imagine living in a world where every transaction you make and your friends make and your family makes is 100% completely surveilled and tracked by large companies and by governments around the world. I mean, it's a scary proposition, and that's why I think we should be getting the word out and calling a spade, even if it hurts people's feelings. The Bitcoin maximalists have no problem calling things shit coins, and I so we should be calling Bitcoin for what it is. So people, buyer beware. People need to know what they're buying. They need to know what this technology is. It's being sold as this great liberator, and I just don't really see how it could possibly be that when it's effectively a surveillance tool.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I'll try to. I already discussed this. I've gotten into arguments with people, and I do think people should be made aware of it. I myself I have been getting a little bit excited lately because people seem to be talking about it again. They seem to be talking about issues with Bitcoin and privacy, but I don't know if they care enough about it more than like their wallets and, having loyalty to the coins that they already have promoted or liked to really try to solve these issues. And I definitely take an issue with people who promote Bitcoin, which I was so surprised when I saw this, but I got into an argument with someone recently because they were saying that Bitcoin was anonymous, and I was like, no, it's not. Like, this is already established. Like, no, it's not. And like, I don't get into Twitter arguments very often, and I definitely got into that one because I was like, this is so obvious, and I was like, it's pseudo-anonymous, and trying to explain, and to the very end they were like, oh, it's just a word thing, and I was like, no, this is pretty established. Like a wallet address is pseudo-anonymous, it's not anonymous. And so there are people out there, and this particular person had a pretty good following, which you get very quickly on Twitter if you're mean to other people. That seems like the best way to get a large following, and he was one of those people, and I was kind of arguing with him about it. So I am very concerned about that. And something else I'm kind of concerned about, even though I like the effort and I want to know your opinion on this, is people who are promoting not necessarily third party, but sometimes third party mixing services, or even like the Wasabi wallet with Bitcoin. Because to me, if you don't have privacy at the protocol level, then that's not good enough. But at the same time, I'm like kind of happy that they're trying, to do something. So like, what do you think about specifically these solutions that people who are Bitcoin maximalists who say, oh, let's just use a second layer solution for this issue? I don't think it should be a second layer solution, but I also don't see so many people who are already into Bitcoin changing their minds. So if they're gonna stick with it, then it's better that they have that. So like, what do you think about that?
Once again, I mean, I kind of ultimately think it's irresponsible. Just like it's irresponsible to go out and promote Bitcoin for being this great liberating technology, and it's digital cash or it's digital gold when it's lacking fundamental aspects. I think it's irresponsible to go out and say, hey, you know what, it's okay to use Bitcoin as long as you do X, Y, and Z. So it may not, we realize it's not perfect, it's not private, but just use these other things and it'll make it private. And I don't think that the people that are working on those projects, great, because I mean they're pushing. They're trying to implement privacy into Bitcoin, so by all means, if anything, I think it will ultimately expose the flaws of Bitcoin, and people will realize that, well, they should just be using a true crypto. So I mean, I think that's great. But I think it's like trying to put lipstick on a pig, right? So it's like it's broken, it's fundamentally flawed. Instead of just fixing it, which you really can't do at this point, I believe, right? It's going to be very hard to implement fungibility into Bitcoin on a protocol level. It just doesn't seem like that's going to happen politically within the political system of Bitcoin and crypto land. I don't think you're going to see that happen. You're not going to get the consensus to truly make Bitcoin fungible. So because that can't happen, they're trying to put a band-aid on it and use these things like third-party mixing services. And I think, like it's great that people are working on that tech, but it's also irresponsible, I think, to promote it, because people are going to get burned. I mean, you're going to use these third-party mixing services, and it's going to come back to bite you. We've already seen that happen with people. I mean, I forget the name of the third-party mixing service that was recently cracked down upon. I don't know if you know the name. I should know this. I forget the it happened about 2 weeks ago. A major one got the the guy who started it, I think, is being charged with money laundering for hundreds of millions of dollars. You know, it was being used to essentially mix Bitcoin, so then those Bitcoins can be used to make purchases on the dark web, and now he's being charged with money laundering. And you know, that's an issue. You know, so people that are using these mixers, these third-party mixers, may, you know, they may get in trouble. They may think what they're doing is a good thing, that they're cleaning their Bitcoin, but what are they really doing? They're mixing it with a bunch of other dirty Bitcoin. I mean, nobody's using those things unless they think their Bitcoin need to be cleaned in the first place, right? So it's a bunch of people that think they need to clean their Bitcoin are all mixing their Bitcoin together. I mean, unless you could try to get everybody to do it, and that's just not going to work. That's why you need it to be private and fungible by default, right? Which is essentially what something like Monero is. So it's not like where you have a third-party thing that you can selectively use and opt into. It's that by default, everything is fungible and essentially mixed together, right? Making it fungible. So yeah, no, I don't think it's a good. I don't think it's a solution. I don't think it's going to work for Bitcoin. You know, exchanges don't know what to do about it, right? So if they see, we're seeing this already. So you know, if they're using chain analysis, and if they see that your Bitcoins went through a mixer, they may not accept your Bitcoins on the exchange. You know, that's happening. That's real. You know, that's real. So that's just showing you that Bitcoin actually isn't fungible, right? Because they're allowing some coins on the exchange. They're not allowing other coins. Some coins are clean. Some coins are dirty. And to try to clean them with these third-party technologies, I think, is kind of a dangerous game. But ultimately, I think it's okay, because it's just going to show the true value of something like Monero that doesn't require those third-party services.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's just a waiting game, where, you know, like you said, maybe the flaws will be exposed, and then people will decide to look for other solutions. You brought up something that I was maybe going to touch on, which was, you had said that privacy, a true crypto, in your terms, would have privacy by default. And something that I think about when it comes to privacy coins is, because the technology is so new, say, like, I wrote a book on privacy coins, and something I very quickly discovered was that there's so many things that can go wrong. And one of those things is that even if your technology, the protocol, provides privacy, if you don't have enough transactions on the chain, then you don't really have privacy, because you don't have, they call it an unlimited set, which I'm sure you know what that means. But at the same time, if it's just a matter of time before this particular cryptocurrency gains enough volume to provide better privacy, then would you say, like, this privacy coin is no good because it in practicality doesn't have privacy because it doesn't have enough volume, but if it did, the protocol would be sound? Like, what do you think about how you assess the fitness of a privacy coin in terms of providing privacy, if it in theory has privacy, but then in practicality, for reasons like the volume, for example, doesn't? Because to me, I don't call any privacy coin like the best privacy coin or whatever, because it's hard to decide if you're going to focus on the theory or if you're going to focus on the practicality of it. For example, with the volume, or for example, I had a conversation with someone from Dash, and they were saying, well, Bitcoin doesn't have great privacy if you're using something like CoinJoin, but because it has really large volume, that might actually in effect be better than something like Particle, which has Ring CT, but it doesn't have a huge community, and not a lot of people are using the chain. So, like, what do you think about to me that's complicated. Like what do you think about that?
So you're basically saying that, different privacy coins have different pros and cons, and there is no best privacy coin. So
I mean, I just find it, I don't know. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I'm wondering like what your take on it is, because to me it's like, how do you, it's like trying to say what something is before it's fully developed, almost, if that, to me at least. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's while I'm very pro Monero. Like I said, I'm a digital cash maximalist, so I don't like to call myself a Monero maximalist. Obviously, it's hard for me not to become one. I try to stay unbiased, and have an open mind about other projects. So I'm really trying to do that because I think that's important, right? That's why I think things like Bitcoin maximalism is just not good. It's not, it's not honest, right? So I mean, if you're treating this like an experiment, then you should maintain an open mind and realize that nothing is perfect yet. Nothing will ever be perfect, right? And maintain an open mind so you can decide, at which project is the best. And currently, when I measure all things up, I think Monero really, takes the cake. I mean, it's for all its different reasons, I think it is the truest cryptocurrency, and it's currently acting as the best as digital cash. Now, if you look at it at its separate little parts, so collectively as a whole, I think it's the best. I think it's the best form of digital cash we have, because of its technology, because it's actually being used by people for the purposes of fungible value transfer on the internet. Like, you're seeing it actually actively being used on dark nets and dark webs. Whether or not you agree with what people are doing there, I think that shows that it's usable for that purpose. It has liquidity because you're seeing people actually use it. It has low fees, so people can actually transact with it. It's not like just digital gold and it's just sitting there and you can't actually use it. It has things built into it that will allow it to scale. We could get into that if you want to get into that. And then in terms of its privacy or its fungibility, it has all these different attributes that allow it to effectively act as digital cash today. Now, the thing is, 5 years from now, that may not be the case. Like, technology may catch up to it and be able to expose its flaws, because it's not perfect technology. But what's great about Monero is it's a dynamic project. It upgrades every 6 months, and the entire Monero ecosystem all believes in this value proposition of creating digital cash. Everybody who's working on Monero and in Monero wants Monero to be fungible digital cash. In Bitcoin, the messaging is not very clear, right? Some people are like, some people tell you, actually Bitcoin is fungible. It's clearly not, but they'll say it is.
I know.
Some people say, well, it's not fungible, but who cares? I mean, maybe you don't need it to be fungible, or it's actually even better that it's not because of X, Y, and Z. At least exchanges are okay with using it. If it was fungible, exchanges wouldn't want to use it. So there's all these different things. In Monero, it's very clear. Listen, hey, we're trying to be a true cryptocurrency. We're trying to be digital cash no matter what. We've achieved it as of today. And we realize that we have to continue to work on the project to improve it, because privacy is a continuing, it's a nonstop battle, right? So you need to stay ahead of your adversaries that are essentially trying to decrypt your cryptocurrency and unravel it. So I think Monero has achieved it today, and more importantly is that they're committed to upgrading and trying to maintain that. So, like, one of the flaws that people would bring up is confidential ring signatures, right? So that's like, that's not like the most ideal tech, right? Like, that the anonymity set isn't essentially infinite with that, and with enough heuristics things can be unraveled. And today, practically speaking, it works, and it works well. But in the future, that should change. That should be improved. And Monero is actively doing that. It has the Monero Research Lab. There's already, 3 proposals on the table for how it could potentially be improved, what could be swapped out and upgraded. So, yes, I do think some coins are better at certain things than others. But if you look at all the attributes of the coin, and you're trying to pick the one that today is the best form of digital cash, I think that is Monero. Even though something like Zcash may have, these zero knowledge proofs built, for its purposes of hiding the transaction value, and the sender and receiver, and in theory, in mathematical theory, may seem to be better than Monero. In practically speaking, Zcash isn't better, right? Because it's a trusted setup, so it's flawed from the get-go. It's opt-in privacy. It's not even private by default. So they've made they've sacrificed different things. So every project is gonna sacrifice some things and adopt some things. But I think Monero has done a really good job at making the correct design decisions, and most importantly, designing for the purpose of always being fungible digital cash. I think if you ask some Zcash people, I'm not entirely sure that that's the mission of the project, because they clearly haven't achieved that. I mean, they were okay with a trusted setup from the get-go. They were okay with having opt-in privacy. I mean, how are you digital cash if some of your coins are private and some of them are not? You've already lost there. So I think Monero is let's be digital cash, and let's use the best tech that we have today to do that.
It's really,
I don't know if does that answer.
Yeah, it answers it. It answers it. So it's really interesting hearing you talk to me, because I personally don't like the trusted setup either. But I was just talking to someone from PIVX, and they use technology from, first Dash for the governance, but what Zcash is using, and they were explaining to me their solutions for the trusted setup, and I was like, I'd have to be really, 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 really convinced. But if you guys do manage to do that, and also the process is transparent, then maybe that could solve some of the issues that I have with the trusted setup. It's just very interesting hearing it, because that person from PIVX is very into that community, and it's a different mindset, even though the overarching goal of privacy is the same. I want to ask you about what recent developments have happened in Monero, because from what I know, Monero uses Ring CT, and they have the last development I personally researched had to do with the bulletproofs upgrade, which happened last year, I think, a long time ago, to make having privacy easier to achieve because it costs less to get it done. And what new has occurred since then, or what's new about Monero? I consider Monero to be a very pioneering, is the word that I use, is the word I use in the book, privacy coins. So I think it's very good that there's a research lab, things are really tested, and you have very good cryptographers working on it. And I think that is more appealing to me than when coins don't have that kind of research behind it and can possibly respond very quickly in case something breaks, to deal with the protocol. But what's new in Monero? Oh, I can't hear you. For some reason
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
The biggest thing is RandomX.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I just heard the
familiar
term,
with RandomX?
but I don't. Can you explain it briefly?
So RandomX. So like I said, so Bitcoin, Monero's, a mission is to be digital cash, right? So to achieve that, you need to be, fungible, but you need to also make sure you maintain a decentralized network, right? Because that's what's going to allow you to essentially be censorship resistant, right? That's what's going to, if your system's not decentralized, it's not a true cryptocurrency. These things need to be decentralized. That's what's allowing them to be censorship resistant. So in Bitcoin, we're seeing things centralized because of ASICs, right? I mean, people may argue otherwise, but the fact is, I mean, I forget what the stat is. It's something like, 60% of all mining is in China. I think it might be more than that. I think it's like two-thirds of all mining is in China. Essentially, there's four companies that are mining all the Bitcoin. And there's how many companies that actually produce the ASICs? It's like, I don't know, one or two. So I mean, the Bitcoin mining industry has become more centralized over the years, and that's putting it at risk, right? Because I mean, that's like the fundamental aspect of what this needs to be. It's not, it needs to be decentralized if it's going to be censorship resistant. So Monero is committed to staying decentralized, and as part of that, they see the need to be ASIC resistant for now. Because I want to clarify that. I mean, eventually, ASICs on Monero may be okay once it's realized or thought that it won't lead toward centralization. But as of today, ASIC mining seems to be leading towards centralization. So Monero implemented this thing called changes proof of work to what's called RandomX, and it was designed by Howard Chu, who's a Monero contributor. You should Google him. I mean, he's has like a really smart guy. He's done amazing things outside of cryptocurrency as well. He's very well known. He created this, and it's kind of a breakthrough, and it seems to be working. And it's basically what it's done is it's turned the CPU into the ASIC for Monero. So the most efficient way, essentially, to mine Monero right now is with a computer, is with a CPU. So that's ensures the decentralized network for Monero, because now the most efficient way to mine Monero is with a CPU, not with an ASIC. So that means, in addition to keeping it censorship resistant, it also ensures that the network is more is truly permissionless, right? If I'm in Venezuela and I want to get involved in the Bitcoin network and start mining Bitcoin, I need an ASIC. I may be getting free electricity, but practically speaking, I need an ASIC to compete and actually mine something, right? There's no way I'm going to be able to mine cryptocurrency without ASICs. But you can be in Venezuela, and if you could access a CPU and you could access electricity, you can join the Monero network. You can join the Monero network anywhere in the world where there's electricity and there's CPUs, and everybody has a CPU in this day and age. Not everybody has an ASIC yet. Maybe in the future, and at that point, I think the idea is then Monero would be open to allowing that. So that was like I think the biggest breakthrough in Monero, and one of the biggest breakthroughs I think in the cryptocurrency sphere. And what amazes me, a lot of people don't talk about it. I had Andreas Antonopoulos on the show, and he didn't know about RandomX. He didn't.
A lot of people don't know about anything.
He didn't know that Monero had already implemented confidential transactions in.
Yeah, people don't know anything. It's like it's a very weird space in terms of the information and the hype.
I get he's a busy guy. He's focused on Bitcoin, but he's also focused on selling Bitcoin as being this thing that's censorship resistant. That's digital cash. That's digital gold. Actually, I don't think he likes to call it digital.
I mean,
but
sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
He's there and he's talking about this technology where it has these flaws, and meanwhile, there's something that's actually doing what he's hoping this technology is achieving, and he doesn't really know much about it. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest thing. The other thing is, like I was saying, upgrading components, the ring signature. So triptych is something that Monero is looking at. It hasn't been implemented yet. If you do some Googling there, that, the Monero Research Lab is looking into whether or not, I guess it checks all the boxes in terms of, there's going to be any sacrifices made with implementing it, but it looks like that may get implemented as well, and that will add additional privacy to Monero, essentially improving the anonymity set.
Okay, thanks.
I say those are kind of like the two big things that are happening right now.
Yeah, that's really important for me to know. So you were just talking about Andreas Antonopoulos not knowing about confidential transactions in Monero, and I remember when Litecoin, that doesn't really do any development, there were Charlie Lee, I think it was like Wayne adding confidential transactions, and it was like everybody was like, oh, this is so awesome, and it like kind of deflates anybody who's like involved in privacy and cryptocurrencies and understands like, well, people have been building this and trying to promote it and nobody cares. The whole cryptocurrency space, a lot of the times, it just feels like inertia, and nobody cares anymore about people developing things and doing all this work and trying to solve these problems. It just, your voice is only important if you were there in the beginning and everybody got to know you, and then like, oh, I guess you're done now caring about like what's new out there, because it's all like scams like everything else, and it's very disheartening. And like in some ways it's true, like this is the scammiest industry I have ever seen in my life. Like it's like honestly kind of crazy, like how many people are always trying to scam you, and it's like, I'm like a nobody, like why are you trying to talk to me? So I get that, like that's true and that exists, but it's also, it's not cool when you're building, say like this, I'm gonna talk about it, but like this decentralized marketplace, that it's something that was in the original Bitcoin white paper, and people are like, oh, that's cool, and then they disappear. It's like, you don't actually care. And that's how the whole space feels sometimes. So yeah, I guess I know what you mean. If you want, you can comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's crypto is the Wild West, but that's also what makes it amazing. I mean, that's why you're seeing so much innovation. You're going to see a ton of scams as well, because it's just literally open free market. People are just out there. It's all open source, right? They can just grab the code and launch their own version of it, and you're going to see a lot of snake oil salesmen out there, because it's just, with social media, it's easy to just pump these things up and like fool people into thinking that certain things have value. And to really understand these things, it takes time. I mean, since buying my first Dogecoin in 2013, I've been looking at this stuff every day in great detail, for like, I don't know how many hours a day. I have my full-time job, but when I'm not there, I'm in crypto, I'm looking at crypto, and even for me, it's like it's hard, right? I mean, you too, right? I'm sure you put a ton of time into this, so you can imagine people who aren't putting this amount of time into it, and they're just out there on the internet, they're on Twitter or whatever, and they hear a project and somebody says, it's literally in a tweet as to why it's so great, and they don't have the time to go research, and they're just fooled. So yeah, you're going to see a lot of that, but I think that's just an indication of how open this market is, and how much of a wild west it is, which I think is great, which I love about crypto. So yeah, you're going to have the bad with the good, but I do think the Wild West nature of it is exciting.
Yeah, that's a positive way to look at it. One more question I have for you is sort of a comment and then a question. So I also think it's really strange how Bitcoin grew from this cypherpunk kind of ideal, and it's slowly morphing into like literally the opposite of that. Where do you see the space going? I can tell you for myself that I see, like, I hope that it's either like the centralization kills everything else, or somehow they coexist side by side with like people who hold ideals like yourself, like privacy is a human right, having coins like Monero exist alongside the surveillance coins, as you call them. But where do you see it going in the future?
I mean, my hope is that, and I do feel like it's inevitable that something like Monero will really take hold and maybe become like the number 2 coin. Monero, Bitcoin has the network effect. I don't think that, Bitcoin's network effect, though, makes it inevitable that it's forever going to be the one and only crypto. I certainly don't believe in that argument. I think that's we've never seen that in humankind. I mean, I understand these network effects. It's money. There's efficiency reasons for why it would make sense if everybody's using one money, but we don't all speak the same language today. It would be highly efficient if we were all speaking English and not another language, but that's just not the case. It's not human nature. So I mean, I just see I think there's going to be 1 or 2 coins that are going to kind of rule them all. There'll be like maybe like 4 coins, I don't know, and everything else is pretty much going to be insignificant. And I think there's going to be this like transitional period with a crypto like Monero, where because it's private, maybe it's going to get regulated out of existence, and exchanges aren't going to use it. So I mean, even if there's like a dark ages where like only Bitcoin is being used on exchanges, I think that's just going to essentially, I see Bitcoin as kind of being the thing that's going to onboard everybody from the fiat world, is like maybe one of the ways I'm looking at it. Like it's the conduit from the fiat world, and then once people are in crypto, they'll go into true crypto, into a true crypto like Monero. Okay,
I guess that makes some kind of sense. I don't know how long you want this to be, but I guess that makes sense. Is what this is. But I just want to, before I go, tell your audience, because they're probably really into Monero, about Particle, not the coin too much in detail. It's Ring CT. It's very thoroughly vetted. They do audits and stuff, but it uses proof of stake, and it's a fork of Bitcoin. So it's Ring CT implemented on the Bitcoin code base versus CryptoNote with Monero. But the bigger thing I want to say is that there's a decentralized marketplace that can be downloaded. It's decentralized because it's built on top of the blockchain as a platform, and then the blockchain there's like a wallet client, multiple wallets, and one specific wallet connects to an SMSG database that has all the listed information on there. And it might just be something that is interesting to people who are into Monero because it's private and it's censorship resistant. Because all the transactions on the marketplace are anonymous, but for the currency, just as a token itself, it's optional. But for all the marketplace transactions, it's anonymous. It doesn't use any third party. Governance is done by if a certain number of users flag an item on the marketplace, it gets taken down. And there's no moderation between a buyer and a seller. It uses an escrow system. They call it mutually assured destruction escrow. So you put up extra funds, and both the buyer and seller put up extra funds, and you don't get your extra money back until the buyer says that the buyer sends the item, and the seller sends the item, and the buyer says I've received it, and they're incentivized to not lie because they want their extra money back. Right now that's 1-to-1, but that might change in the future. It's just something it's like Monero people would probably be interested in that. Right now it uses Particle, so you would need Particle. You can use Bitcoin. That's the first coin that they added, but it uses a simple swap, so it uses an exchange bot. They want it to be atomic swaps, and I think that's being worked on, but I don't know when that's going to happen because it's actually really hard to do from what I understand. And they're going to be adding more coins in the future. But right now, you can literally download the client and use Bitcoin, and you can buy and sell on there. And it's not the only thing out there. There's Open Bazaar, but Open Bazaar isn't a cryptocurrency. and it also has third-party moderation, which the particle marketplace doesn't have. So it's exciting. I presented it to like the people in the Free State Project, and they were really into it. And I think anyone who has that like philosophical, you know, my sovereignty, they might be interested in the fact that that platform is out there. So it also looks really good. It has a nice GUI.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, yeah, I don't know much about it. How many people is it being used?
Not very much. I think I can't tell you exactly how many. I think there are a couple hundred listings on the marketplace, but I don't know how many transactions are going back and forth. I don't think it's a lot. And it was released fall last year, I think like October or something. I have a video. The mainnet was released. So not very much, but it's new. So hopefully it will grow over time. Yeah.
Cool. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I encourage, people research that, check that out. I don't know much about Particle, only from meeting you at Magical Crypto Conference and like the quick pitch you gave to me there.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm sounding like Andreas Antonopoulos now because I'm like, I don't have time to look into that. But it's true. I mean, that's the thing. Everybody only has so much time in the day, and then they kind of get stuck in their own silos, which is unfortunate. So yeah, encourage people to research as many different projects as they can, as long as they're not wasting their time with scam projects. But yeah, Particle, I would just if I had the time I'll check it out more deeply as well. How long has it been around for?
Well, it started as Shadow Cash in 2014. So that was original. It was community funded, and then they did a token swap in 2017. A one-to-one token swap to Particle. So like the team has been around since 2014, and they just finished building this thing. Like they were always trying to build a private decentralized marketplace, and it finally happened years later. And it's all community funded. There's a foundation in Switzerland that holds the funds. It's a non-profit foundation, kind of like I think Ethereum Foundation. Actually, I take that back. I'm not sure of the technicalities, but there's a non-profit foundation in Switzerland. And I think, I can't tell you the exact number, but because the bull run happened, there were a lot more funds that came out. But it was all it was all individual people donating to it. There's no company or anything like that. So, and sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask one. What do people in Particle think of Monero? Like a lot of the Particle, the big Particle users and the community. I mean, do they have an opinion of Monero? I'd be interested to hear what that is.
I could tell you that I like Monero. But I don't know. I don't really hear people say anything bad, and I think it wouldn't make sense because like it uses ring CT. Like that's the same thing Monero uses. It's just a little bit different. But the actual privacy features, it's ring CT. Like after you guys did the bulletproofs, like Particle did bulletproofs, like So it would be very weird if there was like hostility, because it wouldn't make any sense. So yeah. I just want to say, I'm promoting myself just because I think the conversation is going to end soon, that I have a book on privacy coins. I can't tell you that Monero is spoken of highly, like well in there. That's not a reason to get the book, and for some people, it might be knowledge you already know. It just goes through like the history, like when CryptoNote came out, and then Zero Coin, Zero Cash protocols. It mentions Mimblewimble and something called ZEXE, I don't know how to pronounce it, and then it gives my opinion also. But the first part is all just research based, and then the second and third parts are more like my opinion. And my handle is Crypto Ramble. You find me on Twitter, and you'll find links to the book. It's on Amazon, it's the Privacy Coin Guide, and or on my website, and you see all that stuff if you go and look.
Awesome. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for letting me come on your show and you coming on my show. This is great. I know this is a long time in the coming since Magical Crypto Conference.
I know, it's been a year. We've been trying to set it up. Do you want to tell people where to find you as well? I mean, I'll put like a link in the description, but it's better to have it like in the audio and video.
Yeah, so Monero Talk YouTube channel is the best. That's where we do a weekly show there. And Monero Talk on Twitter, and at Chowbungaman is my personal Twitter. I think those are the important ones.
Okay. Well, I really hope, I don't know, especially with all this coronavirus stuff, like, I don't know what's going to happen in May, but it will be nice to run into you again. And thank you also for having me on Monero Talk.